so excited to see some old friends. This has become like a regular thing that I look forward to every month. And I apologize for the gap in programming because last month we got to celebrate a new chapter being birthed in Santa Cruz. And so me and a friend, Nick Villarreal, who was a previous speaker from here, we went up there and had a good time meeting them, and they had so much new chapter energy. There was just like max full of people. They had like 10 volunteers, all these fun ideas to network, and they had sing-alongs and all kinds of great stuff. It was amazing. Like they're doing live entertainment, and their speakers. The speaker memorized her entire thing. It was like a TED keynote. It was amazing, and she went deep. It was pretty cool. No pressure. But if any of you are Santa Cruz bilocating, go to Santa Cruz and go check it out the last Friday of every month, just like us. And don't worry, I can share you. So Creative Mornings, this Monterey chapter is just one of 244 chapters worldwide. And now we're up to 255 chapters worldwide. Creative Mornings is catching on, and we also want to thank our global sponsor, Adobe, in a minute. But raise your hand if this is your first time coming. Raise your hand. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Give yourselves a round of applause for answering the call to adventure to come to an in-person event instead of a virtual one. You're here to meet people and lift up our creative community. So stick around after the program to pass business cards out and make more friends. But first, let's hear for Adobe. Adobe's our global sponsor for Creative Mornings HQ. They make things happen financially for Creative Mornings. Adobe has this offer called the Creative Apprenticeship, where you can go to this website and learn all about how to start your creative community. Let's talk about the partners that really matter to the Monterey Peninsula chapter, which is Wave Street Studios. Wave Street has been in the process of transforming, and as you can tell, we are not allowed to go into the tea room right now because they are deep in construction. They finished putting tile up on the wall, and this weekend they're going to put grout in between all the tiles. So everything is very much in flux, but very soon the place is going to be open for business again with new offerings that you can eat instead of just drink. So come back to their shows, come back during the day to grab a panini one day, and support Wave Street Studios, our home. House of 8 Media is my company. Let's hear it for me, House of 8 Media. I am your host, and I am your local documentarian, and I love lifting people up who are on mission. I'm really attracted to people who are connected to something beyond themselves and working towards a goal. And that's why I love this creative community, because I get to support speakers on the stage to reach out to their new audience and help people go deeper with their work, like you're going to see today. And so if you've got a documentary or an e-course or a commercial on your heart and you want some support with that, please let me know and I can help you do it. Let's hear it for our opening speaker, Kent, who's going to talk about Kent is going to introduce our keynote speaker and talk about our theme.
Hi, I'm Kent. I love this theme, local, but let me tell you a little bit why, a little bit about myself. I left this country when I was 23 years old and went and spent about 25 years working internationally. A lot of it in Africa, working on questions of gender, poverty, human rights, a lot of policy advocacy, cultural anthropologist of all things. So I spent a lot of time in very small villages in Africa, small, 250, 500. And I discovered community. And after about 25 years, Middlebury Institute asked me to come here and teach. So I left the international realm and I came to Monterey, and I made a decision that I was going to try to stop with all the international garbage and do something here locally. So what do I do here locally? I teach at the Middlebury Institute. I started and run an organization called YIMBY Monterey Peninsula. I handed out my business cards. We're young, we're growing, and we're pro-housing because we want more housing in this area. I also sit on the board of Gathering for Women. Gathering for Women helps homeless women here on the peninsula. The homeless women that we serve, 500 a year, they're all local. These are not travelers. These are local women, vast majority above 50 years old, who've gotten kicked out of their apartments for a whole variety of reasons. So those are the two places that I went really deep. And because there is no local without housing, there is none. There's no such thing. If people can't afford to live here, if young people can't afford to live here, to help us renew the local. Because that's the thing about the local. You gotta keep renewing it. It has to grow, it has to evolve. And for that, you need young creatives such as come here, young creatives like Gabe. So Gabe and I first met when he was a student of mine at the Middlebury Institute. From that time to now, Gabe's become my mentor and my professor when it comes to housing. Yes, I'm involved in housing, very deeply passionate about it, but when I have a question, hey Gabe, I just got asked this question by somebody in the community, I don't know what to say. And Gabe tells me what to say. He has my back. So Gabe, with that, come on up.
Well, Kent, that's very generous of you. I never thought I'd be a mentor to a professor that gave me my credentials, as it were. This is where we start, before the local. So the reason I'm standing in front of you at all today is because I at one point wanted to be a diplomat. I wanted to work in international policy. I wanted to be in front of people who were making important decisions around the world. Not dissimilar to what Kent was doing, probably abroad in smaller villages, but I thought from a young age, I was a teenager working at the front desk of a health club, greeting members, having to be the first person they spoke with at the beginning of their day and be friendly. I was told at a young age, you're really good at this talking to people thing. And at the time, I had no idea what they were talking about. They told me, I'll vote for you someday. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. 17 years old, my first job, Montecito Heights Health and Racquet Club up in Sonoma County. Fast forward a few years, I'm at UC Davis studying international relations, thinking, okay, I'm gonna work for the State Department, going to end up in an embassy somewhere, going to be a foreign service agent, foreign service officer. But the theme today is not international relations, it's local. So how do we get there? I'm gonna tell you how I got there, because it did not start in Monterey. What makes a local? For me, it's about investment. I'm invested in this community. I was just telling a good friend about that last night. But it took a while for me to realize what that looked like and what that felt like. And it took a long journey to get there. So let's follow the journey a little bit. So that's me, pretty young, up in Sonoma County. I started out, again, thinking big. And it took journeys across the ocean to the UK. That's me looking awkward in front of one of those phone booths in London. There was a trip I took while I was actually at MISS to India. That's a statue of Mahatma Gandhi. Back to Monterey, where I started feeling comfortable again. And that's actually the same shirt I'm wearing right now. That was a conscious decision. But it took seeing the world to appreciate where I came from. But it took spending the time here as a student to really appreciate what it means to build something from the ground up, build a connection to a community from the ground up, build my credibility with a community from the ground up so that I can make the change I want to see. So this takes me back to 2015, London. The elections were going on in London or the entire UK at the time. For the first time in decades, a far-right party had come to power. Small proportion, UKIP, they call themselves, the Labour Party got wiped out by the Conservatives. This was a year before our 2016 presidential election. And I was writing a newsletter for a restorative justice nonprofit at the time that also provided asylum seekers with legal assistance, people who were looking for asylum in the UK from places like West Africa, where they were fleeing persecution for their religion, for their gender, for any number of things that causes a person to leave their home. And that election felt like a harbinger of things to come. And I think we can all agree that it indeed was, because in 2016, we had a similar wave of political change in our country. I was working in a law firm at the time in 2016, an immigration law firm. I thought that was what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to work in immigration law and see where that took me, maybe get me into that diplomatic career I was thinking about since I was at Davis. When the election happened and I saw how our new president's looming presence alone, even before he took office, changed the way people looked at the United States, changed the way our clients at this immigration firm looked at us, changed whether they would show up at all. These were dreamers, DACA recipients. These were people coming in for asylum, refugees, and folks who just looking to build a life in the United States, but they stopped showing up for about 2 weeks after the November election in 2016. A lot of them did, at least, because they didn't quite understand what it meant, and they were afraid, justifiably so. So I thought, I need to learn what the heck to do, and I don't think I didn't feel right trying to promote what we were doing abroad at that point. I felt like I need to start here. See where this is going? Okay. So fast forward another couple years, 2018. I'm working in the office of our current congressman, whose name I don't particularly want to promote right now, but that office was a really influential experience for me. I was answering phones. I was just an intern writing policy memos, answering the phones in English and Spanish, taking walk-ins, doing case management. And at the time, Kent was my professor, and he was getting involved in the local city council election for a Timothy Barrett, who was a city council candidate at the time. And I was getting ready to maybe do some volunteering for him. I wanted to dip my toes into local politics. In the office, in the congressman's office, my supervisor was a man by the name of Tyler Barola, who was at the time campaign manager for a first-time city council candidate by the name of Tyler Williamson. You might be familiar with him. He told me, he heard me talking about Tim Barrett, and then told me, you should check out this Tyler guy. He didn't tell me he was the campaign manager. He was very sly. He said, check this guy out. Give him a call. So I called him, left him a voicemail. He called me back a few hours later. Tyler did. And I decided to interview Tyler on my Miss Radio podcast. I wanted to interview all of the candidates who were running for office. And when we got to kind of the crux of why all of them were running, some of them knew better what they were talking about than others. They all had good reasons to run. They all cared about the community. At the center of all of their campaigns was at least the acknowledgement that housing is a huge problem here. Problem in the sense of there's not enough of it and it costs way too damn much. So that was my first opportunity to kind of plug into what was happening locally. I did leave. I graduated in 2019. I did switch entirely from international policy and development to public administration halfway through my degree. A lot of similar coursework, but it did get me more focused on the workings of government, of program evaluation, of learning how to optimize programs that governments are implementing to ideally improve housing affordability. So I thought I'd go work for a planning department, which obviously didn't end up happening. I thought I'd go work for the state government in policy implementation. I would take any opportunity to get involved at the ground up, or at the ground level. So I want to tell you about what makes me feel like a local here. It was leaving and then feeling pulled back. So I left, I went back to Sonoma County. I managed a Board of Supervisors campaign up there. We won in March of 2020. And I don't know if you remember what else happened in March of 2020, but this primary election, we won. We unseated a 3-term incumbent in that Board of Supervisors seat in Santa Rosa or Sonoma County. And then everything shut down. Pandemic got us all holed up for a few months there and gave me a lot of time to think. I ended up going for that idea of working for the state of California. I ended up moving to Sacramento as things opened up a little bit, working for the Department of Housing and Community Development. That's our state housing agency. I was working on the Surplus Lands Act as a staff services analyst, about as low on the totem pole as you can be, with about as narrow a classification as you can get. They didn't let me do the fun research I wanted to do into why these policies were or weren't working at the local level. Our state legislators have some good ideas, and they've implemented a lot of really good state legislative programs to make it easier to build housing, to streamline permitting processes, to incentivize developers to build more and more affordable homes. But how much progress have we actually seen? It's rhetorical, but you can kind of see it around you. But this here is what makes me feel local. When I got the chance to move back, I was thinking about how often I would wake up in the morning and go to Captain Stoker before class when they opened in 2018. I interviewed one of their owners, Tyler Ellis. There are a lot of good, big Tylers in my life. Yeah, for the podcast, the Miss Radio podcast. You might even still be able to find it on Spotify. They had just opened and I thought, this is my spot. Pearl Hour had just opened up. reopened. It had been Carbone's before that, but the new owner decided to go for a totally different and I think much better vibe. Right there, that's Colton Hall. Down there, that's the Farmers Market. And this is that list of, that map of the cool spots in Monterey. But my question to you is knowing what these places are, being able to recognize them by sight, knowing the feel, knowing the sound, the smells, is that what makes you a local?
It's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah, it makes me feel very welcome here, comfortable. It's what pulled me back. But what also pulled me back was the opportunity to work in local housing policy, to promote pro-housing policy like what YIMBY does. So I worked for Monterey County Land Watch for about a year. You might all be familiar with them. They're an environmental policy group that promotes pro-housing infill policy these days. Then I worked for the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, who does policy all around the Monterey Bay area, Santa Cruz, San Benito County, Monterey County. And then I met Diane Coward, who is now the CEO of Revision West. They're a workforce housing developer that I work for part-time as the vice president. In the end, what I kept coming back to about what makes a person local. I was in a development economics class at Monterey, or at the Middlebury Institute, one of my first semesters, or one of my first classes in my first semester, when the professor, Dr. McCleary, asked the class a very poignant question, and that is the one that you've already gotten a little preview of. What is freedom? Anybody have an idea? You know, easy question. Throw something out for me. What's freedom?
The knowledge,
Pursuit of happiness.
Pursuit of happiness.
the ability to make a choice and be accountable for it.
Accountable. I like the sound of that. Anybody else?
Agency.
Agency. Yeah. I think you're getting at my answer. So I'm glad we're all kind of on the same page. My answer was one word, and that word was choice. I chose to come back here. There's something that pulled me back. I don't want to attribute something cosmic to it. Again, it comes down to a lot of the comfort I feel in those places. But choice to be in a place. Choice to be a local. That's a choice, to invest yourself in a place. Now we're gonna get into the good stuff. So, any of you like to go grab coffee in the morning, get a latte, a matcha, have a favorite bar, maybe Pearl Hour? Well, every day, the population of this peninsula at least the city of Monterey nearly doubles. About 20,000 people commute to the peninsula just to work. And that number up there, the workforce, most of those jobs are people who don't live here. A couple thousand, do live and work here. I'm one of those lucky few. This is older data from 2023, 2024 census. We just don't have any updated yet, but I can guarantee it's not very different. These are folks who make our community possible, but are not part of the community. They are not local because they cannot afford to live here. Maybe they would choose to live here if they could. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they would choose to live in Pacific Grove. Maybe they'd choose to live in Carmel Valley, but they don't have that choice. Right, so who are these people? You've met them, I guarantee it. Some of you might be them. If you've ever worked in a kitchen, if you've ever waited tables, if you've ever mixed a drink, if you've ever worked in childcare, if you're a teacher, if you've ever turned over beds at a hotel to feed our transient occupancy taxes, to the tune of about $30 million a year. That's Monterey's single largest revenue source. And it's enabled by hospitality workers. And that 42,500 is an average number. That includes them. That also includes your bartenders, your baristas, servers, everybody who makes this peninsula attractive to visitors, to fund all the work that gets done by the local government. That relies on the folks who cannot call this place home, for the most part. And if they do, they are, I guarantee it, and I know many of them, packed into apartments together. And you know what? They're probably enjoying themselves to some extent because they're with people who share their experience. But there is not room for very many of them. And I'm not going to suggest that the Monterey Peninsula can accommodate all 20,000 people commuting here. There's only one Monterey, and it's not getting any bigger. But it could get a little denser, perhaps. That's what YIMBY advocates for, density. So that $2,200 a month for one bedroom, that's the average price of an apartment on the peninsula, certainly in Monterey. But this is the cost for somebody like that, a barista or a server or a teacher. I am on the board of trustees for the Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, and it's all too real for us. That choice to stay for a teacher is not easy to make, especially early in their career when they're only earning around $60,000 a year. If they have a certificate, if they are accredited, if they have a master's, they might earn a few $1,000s more. But friends of mine commute to Salinas to work there instead because of a few $1,000s difference. They live here, they have dual income households, but man, are they scraping. 30% of gross income is considered the standard for affordability, and that's something we can argue later, but it's at least a threshold that the government uses to measure its goals. We have to settle on something. I would love to make it more affordable than that. I'd love to bring it down, but we got to start somewhere. But your average teacher is spending at least 40% of their income on housing. And these baristas and servers are probably spending even more than that in reality, especially after taxes. This is gross income, but just to put it in perspective. So back to that freedom thing. How do we give our workforce more choices? It's pretty obvious, right? Supply and demand, we build more. Yeah, but how do we make sure that that housing remains available to those workers? How do we guarantee that a new apartment wasn't built by, or it doesn't get purchased by a BlackRock or a major corporation that has very little interest in this community but just knows that it can make a lot of money by building or buying apartments in Monterey? People who actually live here won't get the benefit of all of that corporate money. They'll just pay the rent to somebody who lives states away. So we got to do it a little differently, right? This is me. This is why I'm here. The Opportunity Housing Trust is a community land trust that I founded in 2024, inspired by, prompted by, funded by Diane Coward, who is, again, the CEO of Revision West. She was on the board for a large land trust up in Oregon called Proud Ground. If you're looking for a really great model of what I'm trying to do here, look them up. Proud Ground is easy to find. They have about 600 homes in their portfolio. And every single one of those homes is held in trust. The dirt underneath the homes, whether they are apartments or single-family homes, is held in a trust. That means it can only be used for that kind of housing in effective perpetuity. Revolving 99-year deed restrictions. So the standard deed restriction on affordable housing in California is 55 years now. That's not nothing. That's a lifetime for some people. But it does mean that there are people who will plan to buy that later. So the 99-year revolving ground lease that basically renews with every new owner of the structures. We'll get into that structure here. Don't let me get too deep in the weeds yet. But this is how we make sure that folks who come here can live here and stay here, and that the next person who needs that home can also have access to it. This is the basic model. We can do rentals, we can do homes for sale like a Habitat for Humanity. I'm also on the board for Habitat for Humanity, Monterey Bay. I'm the board secretary. I've been on for about 3 years. We've talked about collaborating. There are good examples of land trusts owning the land and Habitat for Humanity building the homes and then selling the homes to income qualified buyers. We just take a little bit of the work out of it for Habitat and bring down the actual cost for the homeowner. If we own the dirt, that holds value. It also means it's part of the property taxes. The house itself, if any of you own a home here, you're paying for the dirt, you're paying for the improvements, you're paying for the whole thing. The land trust will hold in trust the dirt and reduce the overall property tax burden on the homeowner. And also bring down the cost of their mortgage because that value is split. We call that a shared equity model. So the CLT owns the home or the dirt, and the homeowner will own the structure. This is the goal. Market prices fluctuate. That line probably has some actual little zigzags in it in reality, but the goal is to keep the prices of our homes, whether they are for sale or for rent, steady, because they will be tied to CPI. They will be tied to the Consumer Price Index, because that's how affordability standards are set by the federal government, by the local government in California, or the state government, I should say. Local governments then have to follow those standards when they are setting affordable rents or affordable home ownership. These are the people I want to house, the same people I was talking about before. That stability is what allows them to plan for a future. They know that their landlord is not going to raise the rent by 10% every year. And I'll tell you, there are people whose rent gets raised by even more than that every year in Monterey. It is illegal, but there is no one to advocate for them. That's part of our goal too. We've done a little bit of work for that, and we want to be a resource for it. But we will guarantee that that's not going to happen. The rent I build into my pro formas is maybe a raise of 2% a year. And that is less than inflation usually accounts for. That is just what the average increase is for the changes at the state and federal level for affordability. And just to put that in perspective, we'll get to a little model here in a second. The median income for one person household in Monterey, or Monterey County, is $73,000. So one person, that's the median income. For a household of 4, it's about $114,000. So that's usually a 2-earner household, possibly just one. Maybe they have a stay-at-home parent, 2 kids who aren't working. Has to accommodate a lot of different living situations, but again, these are high-level numbers meant to aggregate their averages, medians. When I was working for the state, Again, they wouldn't let me do the fun research I wanted to do as to why the stuff they were trying wasn't working. We have a regional housing needs allocation, which is a complicated formula related to where jobs are and where people live and what they pay. And then through some black magic happening up at the state, they say you need to build this many homes to bring housing prices down to where they need to be to accommodate that workforce. Our number for the city of Monterey to be built by 2031, which is, if I'm not mistaken, 5 years from now, is 3,654 units, roughly half of which are supposed to be affordable. So in that 30% of gross income range for people earning less than about $80,000 a year for an individual. That's the upper limit of what's considered affordable. That's moderate income. So it's not working yet, is it? I haven't seen any new homes built in Monterey. City Hall is trying to do something with mid-pen housing to create about 40 new apartments on what was historic property. That project's been tied up for years for various reasons, from archaeological studies that needed to be done to now the financing. Mid-Pen is a really powerful nonprofit housing developer, but even they have no power to overcome what the obstacles are on the peninsula, which is, yes, water. We don't have enough water to build necessarily. We don't have, and that's a subjective question, depends who you ask these days, but we can't add new water meters, so no vacant land can be converted into housing right now. You could redevelop though. That's part of what I want to do. Redevelop existing commercial properties or apartment buildings, or to try something that, as far as I can tell, nobody's tried before, which is to create affordable housing out of thin air. So this building is in my neighborhood. I'm not going to name it, I'm not going to name the owner, but he's actually a guy who probably wouldn't mind being named sometime. This is a real apartment building. Can y'all read these?
Yeah, it's too small.
It's a little small, isn't it? Yeah. So most of the one bedrooms are renting for between $2,000 and $2,200 a month. The affordable standard for low income in Monterey is $2,025. One of his apartments is already renting for that. This is the roll from last year on the rental registry, which our city council implemented a couple years ago. It's actually providing some pretty useful data, I would say. It's helpful for me at least. His 3-bedroom unit is renting for under $3,200. This was last year before he bought it. So to my understanding, I almost rented one of these actually myself a couple months ago, and he offered me a rent of $2,095 for a beautiful apartment with a view of the ocean. This guy's doing his housing for the right reasons. He actually built the affordable apartments on Wave Street in the 1980s, I believe. He used a 3% loan from the Monterey city government back when redevelopment agencies were a thing. We don't have that anymore. We don't have that financing anymore, at least not yet. But again, we're trying something new here. This is what his apartment complex looks like. Here's what I want to do with it. Don't worry about all of these numbers, but trust me, they're real. I've spent a lot of time looking through California Revenue and Tax Code. I spent a lot of time looking through Prop 13 to understand that by partnering with a nonprofit, I can reward this property owner for keeping his rents low. He's already renting in what's considered the affordable range. By partnering with us and leasing his building to us for a minimum of 35 years, we can lower the rents from that existing about $2,000 to $2,400 on the one bedrooms down to that $2,025 number for all of them. And yeah, that is still pretty average rent for Monterey, but we will guarantee that that affordability standard is maintained in effective perpetuity, or at least for the life of our lease. That means that those folks will never have to worry about their rent going up by 10% in December and then again in January. I have friends for whom that has actually happened. They said, my landlord raised my rent by 10% month after month. Yes, it's illegal, but it still happens. The cool thing is I can actually make that property manager or that property owner more money by doing this, by eliminating his property taxes. That is a reward for providing affordable housing through partnership with a nonprofit. The full lease basically means all of the rents come down. There's something called an airspace subdivision, which is basically you condoize an existing building to allow one person to lease some of them and another to lease the other. They all stay under the same ownership. I would pay them enough so that they get what they need out of this investment. He paid $3 million to buy this last year, 2025. So this is all based on that property tax, about $33,000 a year, 1.5% roughly on the peninsula. All this is to say, we can take an existing apartment building and convert what are effectively already pretty affordable rents, bring them down a little bit more. You see that average savings, $217 a month. That's grocery. That's savings that you could put in an IRA. That's savings you could put into an appreciating account on a monthly basis. Is it going to change a person's life immediately? No. But what I'm trying to build with this is stability. Exactly. Exactly. And again, this is just one way of doing it. This is one way I'd like to pursue it. I came up with this model a few months ago and ran it past. So I'm also the vice president of the Monterey Commercial Property Owners Association. I don't know how that happened. Well, I do. Revision West owns commercial property, my employer. And Diane does not have time working these community organizations. So I represent Revision West on the MCPOA board. We actually just held a policy roundtable a couple weeks ago, and we're going to have a candidate forum leading up to the election later this year, so keep your eyes peeled. It'll be focused on what those candidates will do for housing. And I think that that's probably some of the most important questions we can ask. But this is what else the Housing Trust is doing. We're actually in the process right now of acquiring an existing but kind of defunct CLT up near Baranda west of Salinas. The Una Nueva Esperanza CLT was formed in the late 90s and ended up building 11 homes using sweat equity and some really scrappy capital stack building. They built 11 homes using, the people who live in those homes now helped to build them, similar to a Habitat for Humanity. They still live there. Everybody's mortgages are fully current. Everybody's doing great. They just don't have any corporate governance. So we are taking them into our ownership. So I will own the dirt. The homeowners will continue to own the homes. My only job is to make sure that those homes go to income qualified buyers when they want to sell, because those folks are building equity. The Housing Trust model allows you to build equity the same way you would with any other home. It's usually either a 2% flat appreciation every year or tied to the market in a hotter market. So we'll get to choose that and talk to them about that if and when they choose to sell. So that's happening right now. We're finally realizing our mission about 1.5 years in. It's the first step. It's a small step, but it is exactly what we were made to do. We're working with some students at Stevenson, some really scrappy entrepreneurial students. They're juniors, Alex and Wyman. They know some of their friends' parents. And I don't know how much you know about Stevenson, but think about the kind of parents you would find there. These are people from all across the world sending their kids to Pebble Beach for really great education. And some of them are probably still busy making a lot of money, and some of them don't know what to do with all that money. And I intend to show them. And these students have the connection. They're friends with a guy who made a lot of money in venture capital and now wants to do something good with it, either to support faculty housing for Stevenson, or if I do my job right, I'm going to massage him into doing workforce housing on the peninsula. I've got my eyes on some commercial properties that could be converted to affordable housing. Not through the lease partnership, but through purchase. By purchasing an existing commercial property and converting it to apartments, you're using the existing water, the water meter. We're taking what's already there without making anything obtrusive, no 10-story buildings like the Marriott. We can just create affordable units out of what shells already exist on this peninsula and are underutilized. Working up in Santa Cruz with a group of tenants who want to create a co-op. It's again a small bite, but we'll take the house owned, the homeowner of this house wants to create a co-op from it. He's working with us. He'll be flexible on the purchase price. And again, we can bring down the cost for that co-op of creating it by owning the dirt underneath. So we'll pay a mortgage on that. They pay a mortgage on the house. Everything's easier. Also working with a group of folks who want to do farm worker housing better than anybody's ever done it before. They want the prices to be lower. They want to do regenerative agriculture. I'm really excited about this project. There's more to come on that down the line. But they want to do something better. We want to do something better, and I think we can do even more together. And of course, this capital fund formation, this is where it gets really ambitious. So with Regenerative California, another nonprofit in the area, I'm working to create the structure for and then eventually begin fundraising for capital fund in the tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to fund this kind of housing. Regen California has an ambitious goal of 3,000 units in Monterey County in the next 5 years. Ambitious, yes. That'll cost about $2.2 billion to build. But if we can raise even a few tens of millions from our local philanthropic donors, from people who want to do impact investment under 4% interest, like the builder of that property that I showed you earlier. He needed that interest rate to build something and then keep his properties effectively deed restricted in perpetuity. That's the kind of investment we need. And that's the kind of investment I'm making in this community. That's what makes me feel like a part of it. I care about this place. I was privileged growing up. My parents gave me so much choice with what to do with my life, and I'm choosing to spend my adulthood here to give even more people the choices that I had growing up. It's the least I can do, and maybe the most. We'll see. But if you want to follow along, I hope we'll have more good news for you later this year around some of those projects I mentioned. But I was instructed to start a newsletter to keep you all apprised, and this is how you're going to get into it. There should be a very, very basic form on the other end of that QR code, so thanks for listening, and I appreciate being a local here as much as you do, I think.
Okay, so first I'd like to share a quote that says, if you have a walkable city, but the people who run the city can't afford to live there, you have an amusement park. Yeah, so I think that's a great quote for...
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So as a person with time but not money, like, how do I show up to get these things happening? I have a friend with some property. How do I encourage him to be like, hey, here's something you do with this property? Like, how do we as just average citizens who don't maybe have venture capitalists money really encourage this? And like, what policy needs to be in place? Like, are there things happening at the city council where we need to show up and be like, yeah, policy change? Like, what does the average person in this room do to help this happen?
I wish I could tell you that the city council was the place to do this. They will do what they can to support pro-housing policy, but they are not ultimately the ones who are going to direct investment. There are plenty of opportunities to show up, and between YIMBY's work, YIMBY exists to tell its members when to show up for these meetings. That's part of why I wanted Kent to be here, because it's a complementary role to what we're doing. They will tell you when to show up for the right meetings in favor of the right policies that will help make more housing possible. But in terms of your working in community with folks who might have resources, whatever resources they are, whether it's land, I think at this point, I'm not expecting anybody in this room to have hundreds of thousands of dollars to put into a housing project. But you might have people in your network who do. And so I might host a fundraiser here in the next few months. You can host a fundraiser too. But more importantly, I just want folks to start understanding what this place should look like. If it's going to exist in the form we appreciate it now, it needs to accommodate the people who make it possible. So take with you this message about the folks who belong here as much as anybody who had the wealth to move here and stay here. That's, I think, one of the most important pieces. And it might just convince them to part with some of the resources or invest them.
Do you think the construction of ADUs may help this situation?
Yes, it's a marginal solution, yes. Recently, the city of Monterey passed a new version, a more advanced version of what's called Senate Bill 9, which allows for lot splits. And if you include one very low income unit on your lot, you can do up to 6 total units after the lot split. If you have a residential property, you can already add 2 ADUs to it right now, if you have the space for it. If they're less than 800 square feet each, then you can add them basically with ministerial review. It means it doesn't have to go to the Planning Commission or City Council unless it has some really drastic variances away from development standards. So development standards for like what it can look like, what the shape of it is. And as long as it's not really obtrusively blocking somebody's view, we know this place is beautiful and you don't want to obstruct somebody's ocean view if you can avoid it. Some people are going to have to adapt to change though, to make the economics work. But the short answer is yes, ADUs can definitely help, especially if the person who builds it commits to building something that is affordable. If they just build some
Water allocation for ADUs?
So there are 140 acre feet of water currently available to the city of Monterey to build more housing. But our city attorney doesn't think that we should use it because she's afraid of the state, the CPUC, the cease and desist order. I can tell you with 100% certainty that the law, the cease and desist order allow for intensification, such as building an ADU. This is an opportunity for advocacy. There will be opportunities at the city council, and I hope Kent is tracking this. We need to push the city to use the water it's got. If you have a water meter, you can intensify under the CDO, as long as you're not changing use. If it's residential and you're just adding ADUs, that's residential use. It's not a change of zoning, it's not a change of use, you're just trying to help. And I don't think the city can resist for much longer. This isn't the council. The council voted against using that water a few months ago. Not our mayor. Mayor Williamson and Councilmember Garcia voted in favor of this. The other 3 voted against it. Hold them accountable.
Now, I noticed Seaside had this project, 110 units off of Broadway that was supposed to be affordable housing, and the developer developed it, and in one bedrooms are selling, renting for over $3,000 a month. So that was supposed to be affordable housing and turned out not to be affordable housing.
Yeah, that's what happens when a project gets tied up in entitlements for 20 plus years and has 20 years of attorney's fees to pay. They have to pay it off from the rents. Whatever the intention was with that project at the beginning, maybe they had better intentions. But yeah, there's nothing resembling affordable housing in that. There are, I think it's a minimum of maybe 10 or 11% is actually deed restricted, meaning there are some income qualified people living in some of those units, but it is a very small proportion. And those got snatched up really quickly. And if those people stay in those units for as long as they can, I won't be surprised. It's not going to turn over very quickly. But the rest of them, yeah, $3,000 for a 1-bedroom. You saw in that roll from the Old Town apartment building, there's a 3-bedroom renting for the same amount in Old Town Monterey because a guy
And
has
this
a good
is
heart.
across the street from the post office in Seaside.
Yeah, that's what happens when too much money gets tied up for too long. And that's partially the city of Seaside's fault for not making it easier to do it.
If you don't mind, I have a personal question for you. Of all the photographs you took when you were visiting India, why did you choose that one?
So if I'm being perfectly honest, I would have more readily used the one I took of Leo Tolstoy in Gandhi's first ashram in Ahmedabad. So Gandhi is from Ahmedabad in Gujarat state. I got really sick when I was in India, as most Westerners do in their first couple weeks. And I spent, on the first day, we walked into the ashram and saw all these photographs. I wanted something recognizable, to be honest, from the photo. The photos of me were of me and my then girlfriend, and I didn't want to do that today. But I was with a group of students doing research. When I was in the hospital, this stuck with me. I had just read War and Peace before I went to grad school. And when I saw this portrait of Leo Tolstoy on the wall of Gandhi's ashram, I thought, the heck? So I looked into it. Apparently they exchanged letters over the course of 10, 20 years when Gandhi was a young lawyer and trying to figure out how to make a difference in his country. Gandhi was a problematic person as well. He treated women very poorly in his life. We love our heroes, but we have to be real about who they were. However, he learned the concept of ahimsa, nonviolent protest, from Leo Tolstoy, who's one of my favorite authors. I would love to have used that, but I don't think anybody would have known who he was. But that's a story I do like to tell. Thank you for asking.
You know, I was looking at your numbers, your statistics, and the peninsula, at least in Monterey, you're saying most of the tax base is coming from the hospitality industry.
Well, the single largest source, yes.
Single largest source. Seems to me they would be natural partners to start to look at because, again, the people that are serving the restaurants, changing the sheets, need a place to live. And they are commuting from great distances, and these are large corporations that should have resources. I realize it's hard to get to the right people, but they are benefiting substantially from this location. And I like your idea of getting into the Pebble Beach in that network, but certainly I can't see why the hospitality industry can't play a bigger role.
Yeah, you're hitting on something that a lot of the folks I work with have thought about a lot. And there is energy among large employers in Monterey County broadly. Agriculture is one of the best examples. Large ag producers, Taylor Farms, invest a ton of money in housing their workers because it makes sense for them in the long term to do it. And it's easy for them to recognize that value. Montage Health pays the equivalent of a down payment as a bonus to new doctors to move here so that those doctors can buy a home in Carmel. That's a recognition of a need.
Yeah.
Just so happens to be a pretty high level luxury need.
Level, yeah.
But there is no reason that Montage couldn't be doing the same for its nurses. In fact, I've had conversations with their executives. They are thinking about this. Hotels, those are international corporations. I haven't had access to them yet, but you're absolutely right. There is a vested interest in housing that workforce. The city of Carmel, interestingly enough, is looking into conversion programs on its hotels. These are mostly mom and pop operations, or at least local, if not mom and pop. There is a recognition of that as a resource. The existing hotel rooms, you can get a basically financial reward for converting your unit, a visitor accommodating unit, into a housing unit in Carmel. Basically, they're issuing, if you're familiar with like a carbon credit, they're issuing hotel room credits because you can only have so many in Carmel. There's a finite number of hotel rooms there. And if you can trade those around, and you basically get the ability to trade that hotel room for cash in Carmel, or to add more units to your hotel if you convert it to housing. So there are people thinking about this. I would love to be connected with more of those employers to invest in workforce housing for their staff more directly, whether it's on-site or off-site. But there just aren't so many sites on the peninsula. But there's plenty of property to be converted. That's where I would like to focus my energy.
I read last 6 or 8 months about a program using some properties on Garden Road to house teachers. So who is behind that, and is that working?
That's us.
Great.
That's MPUSD. So Brad Slamma bought an office building there. He's a big he's a developer in the area who knows what he's doing for redevelopment. And he converted this office into 60 apartment units. MPUSD bought it for $35 million. We have, from the bonds that many of you might have approved, the general obligation bond, so thank you if you voted for it, we were able to use, of our about $60 million allocation in those bond funds, we used $35 million to buy 60 units. Those are mostly 1-bedroom and studios with a smattering of 2 bedrooms, averaging around $500,000 per unit. And if you broke that down by square footage, I don't think you'd be super happy, but it was something. And it's housing, they had a waiting list over 200 people for those applications. And we just got everybody in late last year. We're probably still filling up a few, but there are 600 teachers in our district. And this is just MPUSD. There's still Pacific Grove, there's Carmel to worry about, and they don't have the resources or haven't used them yet to do something similar. But that's a great example of a major employer investing in workforce housing, because we have a 20% turnover at MPUSD. And those are mostly 2nd or 3rd year teachers who they tried, but they just couldn't make it work. So thank you for lifting that up. It's a really important example.
Thank you for doing it.
I wasn't on the board when that happened. I was appointed to the board last September when Amanda Whitmire had to leave. She moved up to Marina. But I will be running for that seat again later this year.
Hi. Are you working with an investment advisor or an investment firm that's local, that does understand what you're doing and can talk to everyone from the billionaires to the teachers and look at how these investments meet market rate, beat it, or if we do hit inflationary situations in the near future, how this can be a better investment long term for our community?
Yes, in fact, I am, ma'am, who I've never met. Yes, so one of the projects I showed up there was the Capital Fund. It's not just a schmo like me who, yes, knows housing policy and yes, understands a pro forma, but has no idea how to construct an investment portfolio. I'm working with 3 impact investment advisors on this project, one of whom is based in New Mexico but is currently moving his operation out here, another who's based in Big Sur, and one who's based in Washington and has worked closely with Microsoft on their impact investing program and knows the ins and outs of Amazon's as well. They have billions that they are investing at these lower than 4% rates because it makes sense for their corporate role. They get a tax break on it, and it makes sense. But the same thing could make sense for somebody locally as well. If you have a business and you're making a lot of money from it, but you'd like to pay less taxes on it, I can show you a very good way to do it, and that's through impact investing. But these advisors do know how to articulate the value of that, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what we come up with. We're in the middle of an implementation sprint right now, following on the forum I mentioned from November of last year with Regenerative California. Regenerative California is kind of the core convener for this group, and we're going to have a public share out in the next few months about the model we've come up with for this capital fund that will indeed show that you can invest in local housing, not a real estate investment trust somewhere else in the United States. You can invest in something that affects your community and make a return on it.
That's more what I was thinking in terms of you could talk to the hotel owners, but you could talk to the hospital, you could talk to a school and get the teachers to understand in their own small portfolios how to make local investments that will weather the storms ahead.
There are models that include very small buy-in for that kind of investment at $100 a month from somebody that can get them the same return just at a smaller scale. But if you aggregate a lot of investment from the small to the large, just think about what we could do.
So you're talking about creating some concept.
Exactly. Yes.
Carmel Valley is dealing with the airport strip right now
Yeah.
with 90 units. Are you involved with that?
I am not, but it is something I support as long as it's done right and responsibly in terms of public safety. It's a builder's remedy project, so there's nothing anybody can do about it one way or another, as long as public safety is not compromised. Yeah.
Gabriel's going to stick around for a few minutes after the programs to answer more of your questions. Thank you everybody for those great questions, and thank you, Gabriel. All right, so we like to end our program with Community Spotlight. So this is your chance to come up and talk for 1 minute in front of the group. And this is your chance to announce something that's going on in your life. If you have an event or a ribbon cutting or a book launch or a new newsletter or you got something to say, just come up here for 1 minute and give your pitch. And there's a microphone right here, and we'll come around this side so you enter from here. We'll start with you, G.
So 1.5 million people every year in the United States go to ER because of medication mistakes. That one person was actually my grandpa last year. He went to ER twice because of medication mistakes. And I was like, there needs to be something about this. And I was like, I was talking to a lot of pharmacist friends, and I interviewed 11 of them. And they actually have their own internal tools to see what interaction happens with each medicines. And I was like, but we don't have it as a caregivers to patients. And they're like, I don't know. I mean, don't talk to me about that. So I was like, okay. And I had a mission. I want to reduce that number, 1.5 million, to reduce it. So I created an app, and I launched it 3 weeks ago. I'm pretty new. I'm local. And I have a pamphlet. And what it does is you capture your medicine, and it digitize all the medications. And when you put in the digitation, it would actually show you a possibility of interaction between each medicines, contraindications, and also if you put allergy on your profiles, because sadly, you just have to go through them, right? and then you put all those allergy in it, you could also see the interactions. And so the main thing is, I have digitizing medications. Another one is interaction checkers. Another one is a reminder, of course. So that's my pitch, and thank you so much.
Okay, I have something very local to announce. The Western Flyer Foundation in Moss Landing, with the Western Flyer, the boat that Ed Ricketts and John Steinbeck took to the Sea of Cortez all those years ago, is sponsoring a movie night with 2 films about the Western Flyer at the cinema in Pacific Grove, April 17th. It's a Friday. I printed out some of their flyers, and this is really cool news. They are going to be moving their headquarters back to Monterey this year, and they have a lot of great events. So come to the movies. I left some flyers, and I just wanted to get up and say this because they're all over in Moss Landing doing their thing. So thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Ashley Edge. I'm a local realtor, a YIMBY, and a walking group leader. And I just wanted to invite you all to my walking group. You may have heard of it, Walk Every Street PG. We are restarting this Wednesday, April 1st, 5:30 p.m. We'll actually meet right on David, where David meets Ocean View Boulevard in front of the aquarium. What we do is we walk every block of every public street in PG. We get up to 60 walkers who join us. So it's a great way to be healthy, join us in this goal, and meet some other great people. And we'll walk essentially April through September. So we'll have enough daylight to walk in the evening. You can find us on walkeverystreetpg.com. We just launched our website, and also Instagram, walkeverystreetpg. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jen Cerigos, and I'm really excited to announce the Monterey Bay AI Association. I'm sure a lot of you have these moments where you look back and you think this moment changed my life. And for me, that was when I created my first custom GPT. And that was a really long time ago now, and I've come a very long way since then. And my mission with the Monterey Bay AI Association is to train people in AI so that we have a responsible, ethical adoption of the technology, and we use it for good for humanity. The technology can do a lot of harm, but it can also do a lot of good, and I want to help educate and train as many people as possible in our community to learn how to use this technology so they can advance their careers and so that we can do what's right for humanity. You can go to mbaia.org. Our next meetup is going to be April 23rd in Carmel. We're going to be at a local office, and we're going to be talking about automations. We're going to talk about what you can do to improve your workflows so that you can get more time back and go enjoy the beach, because that's really what this is all about. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. It's the end of our program, and I just wanted to say one last final thing. My time as host for Creative Mornings is coming to a time of transition. I am looking for the next host. It's customary for a host to find somebody after a year or two, and I'm coming up on my second year soon for Creative Mornings, and I might have some travel plans this summer, and which will take me away. So if you yourself are interested in talking to me about like partnering with me, I'm still going to stick around and help probably with the recordings. Wave Street Studios is available for you to take over if you want to do it here, but if you want to do it somewhere else, you can. It's up to the new host to what you might want to do. So if you're interested, or if you know somebody who's interested, have them contact me. And that's it. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you next month.